What is up, guys? Welcome back to Flow States. You are joined, as always, by myself, Luke, and my co-presenter, Adam. We are here with episode 3 today. We've officially recorded 4 episodes in total, but one being that episode 0, and now we are on to our third chat already, and it's been great fun so far. Like, I won't lie, it's been a lot of us kind of chatting about our training and our roads to the various marathons coming up, but by the sounds of it, you guys have really taken a lot of value in our conversations. So one thing I will just plug as we're at the start of the pod is if you do enjoy these podcasts, please go ahead and share them, like them, download them, follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is. It helps us in kind of sharing this with other people, of course, but then building up traction and obviously getting this to as many people as possible. So with that out of the way, I don't want to digress any further. Let's kind of have a little bit of chat. Let's have a little chat about training. Adam, how's the week going? Have we got any special runs that have taken place?
Yeah, mate. Great to speak to you again this week. It's been, we just mentioned off air, it's been a few days since we've spoken, and it's really good to have a conversation with you again, Luke. So, yeah, I will not go through the week in every single small detail, but I'll rather cover a few of the kind of talking points. I think, again, I'm always conscious that I'm talking about a week of training that happened
Previously.
almost 2 weeks. It started almost 2 weeks ago, yeah. So yeah. Monday I actually kicked that run off in London. I kicked that week off in London. I got out for 10 miles on Monday morning. Again, I've just popped in the diary here. You know what, mate? By the way, I've decided that I'm back in miles. I don't know how well I can function in kilometers. I mean, I know how to translate the kilometers, but I'm just a miles kind of guy. And
as long as you can translate it, because I'm doing better. I think I know it's 1.6k to a mile, but you might need to do some on the fly maths for me.
Yeah, the distance calculations are pretty easy. It's the pacing calculations can be quite tricky. So listen, I kicked it off with 10 mile or about 16 kilometers in London. The thing that I was also thinking about was, because I record my runs in miles and I generally run a set amount of miles in a run, when I convert it to kilometers, it's a really weird number. You know, it's like 16.3 kilometers. So listen, I've kept it in miles for today, but yeah, hopefully you guys can translate. So 10 mile in London, around 7:05 per mile. And as I say, I've just popped into the diary that I was feeling really good. I popped a route into my Garmin. So I used this the couple of days I didn't run with Con in London. You know, after the long run, Monday, Tuesday, I used the Garmin route builder function. And that's super handy anytime I'm anywhere new. It lets you just put in a route. You can design the route yourself and then sync it to your watch, and then off you go. I have such a bad sense of direction, and especially in a city like London, never mind somewhere local to me, but yeah, that just means you don't get lost. You get to maybe go and explore somewhere that you maybe wanted to go and explore. So that run was kind of around Hyde Park down into, I think it's St James's, where Buckingham Palace kind of is. So that was a really enjoyable 10-mile run in the morning. And then Tuesday morning again was London. I done the same, popped it into Garmin Connect and headed out towards Richmond Park. So I did a longer run. I ran for 15 miles. Again, I've just put in the diary that I felt great. That was around 6:40 per mile. Seen the deer, which was pretty cool. And yeah, definitely keen to get back to Richmond Park at some stage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to jump in there, like, I can completely back that. When I was at uni, I think I've already told you this, Adam, but for the listeners, I went to university in Ealing in West London, and at the time I was really big into cycling. So I was doing not crazy mileage, but I was doing kind of 4 or 5 long-ish rides, and my go-to would be to go down from Ealing to Richmond, which I think took me about 20 to 25 minutes to ride, and then I would literally just do laps of Richmond Park, because you get so many of those kind of rolling hills, and there's some really, really steep climbs, which is great training. So I'd literally just kind of go up one of these climbs, turn around, go down, and just again, it wasn't really formulated training. It was more just how many reps can I do without completely gassing myself. And again, for those that don't know, there's the deer is kind of the selling point of the park. There's just these amazing deer Fantastic place to get to if you're a runner or cyclist.
Yeah, I really didn't expect to see the deer, but when I got into the park, there were literally hundreds of them, and they were crossing the roads and everything. So that was class. And I was also running on like my favorite surface, that like compacted kind of dirt with some gravel at times as well. And that goes right, it seems to go right around the perimeter of the park. Now, I didn't get the whole way around. It's a massive park. But yeah, that's by far my favorite surface to run on. And I'd love to go back for a proper long run, actually just around the park. So yeah, that was great, mate. And then I was home late Tuesday night and into a key session on Wednesday, which I stole from the one and only Dan Nash. For those that don't know, Dan is an exercise physiologist and a coach from Wales. He is the host of a podcast called the Physiology of Endurance podcast. So anyone that likes to nerd out on the physiology of running, him and I think it's Owain that's his name, do an absolutely brilliant job on kind of debunking some of the myths, talking through the science, talking through the physiology, and talking about their own training. Dan's I don't want to butcher it, but he's a sub 2:15 marathon runner from memory. So yeah, he's a
2:15.
Yeah,
that's basically sub elite. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
cracky.
Yep. He's a sub elite runner. He's represented Wales in a few different not championships, but a few kind of big events. So yeah, he's a proper runner. But he's an exercise physiologist, and yeah, he's fantastic at sort of communicating. Sometimes people of science aren't necessarily the best at communicating the science, so to speak, but he's fantastic at doing that. So definitely worth a listen. So I actually stole one of his sessions. As I said, my Wednesday sessions, they're like my big sort of like, I don't even want to call it a marathon specific session just yet, but my higher volume session. So I actually jumped on the treadmill. The weather was absolutely brutal. It was very, very windy and lashing rain. And I'd also just got home the night before, so I was feeling a little bit tired. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to control the intensity here. Jumped on the treadmill, and I did 4 by 6 minutes, 8 by 3 minutes, and 10 by 1 minute 15. So 10 by 75 seconds. And again, like I've been doing for most of the sessions this week or the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to progress the session on. I've tried to just get faster as the session goes and kind of replicate what I want to do on race day on a smaller scale. That was really good. I took on board quite a bit of fuel during that. It was 500 mils of isotonic sports drink and 40 gram gel, so really well fueled and a brilliant session. I'll probably skip out the next couple of days. It was just a bit of easy running, recovery running, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday was much the same. I did some easy running with some hill strides. And then Sunday we met up for a big long run in Craigavon Lakes here where I live. There was a group headed up by Noel McNally from Roadrunners in Belfast, and they came down for a 21-mile group run where we started with like a 9-mile warm-up where we just took it pretty relaxed in a big pack. There was like 15 to 20 people, and that first 9 mile was pretty chill. And then we planned to do 12 miles progressive. So we it's a 5k loop or a 3-mile loop. So we just planned to get faster every lap. So kind of lock in on a pace for a lap and then get about 10 seconds per mile faster every lap right up to the finish. So we kind of started that progression at about 6:25 to 6:30 per mile pace and got down to like 5:35 to 5:40 per mile by the end. So we were really moving, and that was a really good run. It was great to do it in a group, practicing even just running on the heel of someone like you will be on a marathon day in a group. And again, just getting lots of fuel on board. I had about 140 grams of carbs in that sort of 2-hour, 15-minute run, which I'll plan to kind of increase over the coming weeks. So, yep, that all went really well, the fueling, the pacing, and was pretty delighted with that week of training. So all up, it was 104 miles, which I think is about 166 kilometers, and lots of easy running, the sessions, as I mentioned. And as always, I added in just that little bit of speed work with the strides and short hill sprints.
That's a big week, and even that run is pretty hectic. Like the fact you were taking on what's that? I mean, if you're having 4 gels, that's probably 500 calories worth of gels, which is a fair amount, especially for a training run.
Yeah, it's up there. It's somewhere between 400 and 500. I think I calculated at the end because one of the gels was 30 gram with caffeine.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it is. I mean, I think there is massive benefit to be had by fueling like that on a training run. One, you're going to do it on race day, so you're practicing it in training. You're getting your gut used to taking on board the carbohydrate that you'd be taking on race day. And finally, like from a recovery and an adaptation point of view, you're going to recover so much quicker, like we mentioned in another episode. And the adaptations are going to be fantastic as well because the exercise is fueled. And so I find when the exercise is fueled, I actually gain more from the training. That's pretty anecdotal from me personally, but I know myself when I'm fueling my training and not sort of, completely depleting the body in a session, not only am I able to kind of back up and run well the next morning, and feel pretty good, but I actually find like I gain more from the training as the weeks progress. I feel like I'm getting fitter than I would be if I sort of wasn't fueling as well. So yeah, I think it's 2-3-fold the advantages of getting that fuel on board.
I mean, you say it's anecdotal. I think that's pretty well backed as well. The fact of the matter is, like, if you're taking carbs on board, especially if you're pushing a decent run, you are kind of you're going into, you're obviously metabolizing aerobically, but you're also using your anaerobic system. So you're using carbs, and in order to make sure that you can maintain that amount of energy to the muscles, you're definitely going to be in need of that, especially when it's carbs coming in, it's going straight into the blood and whatever. And I think there's a little bit of research, or maybe a fair amount of research, I don't have it handy, but to suggest that if you're taking carbs during a run, that can actually decrease lactate, your lactate buildup, or at least your ability to kind of expel that lactate. I can't quote the exact study, but I'm pretty sure if you have carbs during the run, the build up is a little bit slower, even though, like, obviously you'd say that if you're taking on board carbs, you're obviously going to produce lactate, but the rate in which it increases is not as harsh, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it kind of makes sense, if you think about it from a kind of logical standpoint, your body likes to prioritize where it devotes energy and where it kind of partitions energy. And if it's not partitioning energy to maybe the production and the buffer of lactate because it has enough in terms of, to metabolize for the actual exercise in the muscles, then it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily produce as much or have to buffer as much lactate in order to continue at said exercise intensity. So I'm thinking about that with my kind of problem solving brain. It might not be what's actually happening, but that's kind of the logical explanation, I think, for that. Yeah, and I also find, just like, again, for me personally, if I'm feeling really well during a session, I'm not useless for the rest of the day. It's as simple as that. Like, there's nothing
Yeah, for
worse
sure.
than kind of feeling like, yeah, okay, you might feel like the sense of satisfaction that you've done a good run, but lying on the sofa on a Sunday afternoon, sort of fit for nothing, is pretty grim. So
Yeah.
those sessions being really well fueled just means that I can bounce back. And similarly, I'm also not absolutely starving for the rest of the day. Granted, I am always hungry and I'm eating a lot of food, but I kind of find like I can just stay on top of my appetite much easier if I've fueled the session. Rather, if I haven't fueled the session, I've completely depleted my glycogen in the muscles. I've almost gone to the point where I've bonked in a session. Then, like, it's almost impossible to refeed after that. It's almost impossible to sort of reset your appetite.
Catch
And I
up.
think, yeah, you're just
Yeah.
you're playing catch up for the next probably few days. So that kind of cuts all of that out. And as I said, the biggest benefit to it is that I'm practicing what I'll do on race day, especially as I get down closer to those like race intensities. This weekend I'll probably do not as an intense long run. I'll probably go back to this shorter Saturday session with the kind of aerobic endurance long run, and I probably won't feel that as much because I don't need as much fuel. But for those faster progression long runs, I'll be fueling up. And even the session this week that I'll cover next week, I took on board even more fuel. During that 1 hour training session, I had like 85 grams this week during about an hour and 5 minutes of running, an hour and 7 minutes of running. and it set really well. But again, that's a topic for next week. But yeah, fuel is your friend, you know.
And did you go for the sweets beforehand or just the isotonic?
On the long run or this week's
The long
session?
run. The long run.
No, I didn't go for the sweets beforehand. Actually, tell a lie, I think I did, because again, we were starting at about 8:30, and I'm just not, I don't want to say I'm lazy. I just want to get as much sleep as possible. So I don't want to get up at 6 a.m. or, 5:30 a.m. to eat a big bowl of porridge or whatever. So yeah, I think I had something. Oh man, I don't know. I think I had something like a banana and a Rice Krispie Squares bar about an hour and 15 before, and then I had a handful of sweets before I actually started, and that's been working really nicely. As I get closer to the marathon, I will start to practice the proper breakfast, because I will be getting up, 3+ hours beforehand and having my usual pre-race porridge and honey and stuff like that. So yeah, as I get closer, like I think we're now, I can't remember how many days out from London we are, but it's getting closer. And
Yeah,
once I'm
I
sort
think
of,
it's just done just over 8 weeks.
yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So as we get closer, I'll start to practice the pre-race breakfast. But yeah, mate, that was my week. Hopefully I covered all the bases. Do you want to tell me a little bit about yours?
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. And to be honest with you, just before I go into mine, it does always I say inspire is probably the right word, just because again my mileage is probably about half of what yours is at the moment. And again, I'm not going to go out and just try and push the mileage because I want to beat Adam. We're definitely in different shoes, but hearing what you're doing, I'm like, yeah, man, I can get my 80Ks, no problem. But yeah, at the moment, my weeks are looking pretty similar, honestly, from week to week. So again, for those that don't know, I'm working with, I'm sure he won't mind me name dropping him, but David McCarthy, who used to coach Adam, is now coaching me. And because I am still relatively, I guess, early on in my running career, we're focusing more on building my aerobic base, because a lot of the training I was doing prior was more intense than it needed to be. So, and there was a lot of gaps missing in terms of the style of training I was doing. So my weeks tend to, again, same structure, like Monday, easy run. Tuesday is normally an LT1 session on the on the treadmill. Wednesday, Thursday, more easy runs, just getting some mileage in. And then Friday, I'll do an LT2 session. And again, this stays pretty much consistent every week. Maybe the length of the intervals might change, but the structure always the same. And then
that's just what I was going to ask. Sorry, mate. Is the volume, or kind of the global volume of those sessions, is that being extended as the weeks go on, or are we kind of keeping that in a certain sweet spot?
So really good point. At the moment, it's been staying pretty consistently around kind of 80, if not the early 80s. But as of last week, I actually had my first long run put back into the program. So I think I did 3 or 4 weeks of just kind of aerobic base building, like leave the long runs out, just focus on getting time at certain kind of thresholds and building that tolerance. And then I had a 26K, which I have no idea what it is in miles. That's probably about 14, just off the top of my head, maybe. No, more.
I think it's about it's about 16, because 21.2 Ks is a half marathon, which is 13 miles. And then you're adding 5 Ks onto that, which is another 3 miles. So yeah, it's about 16 miles.
Yeah, well, there you go. And I had, so that was my Sunday. And again, that was just in preparation to start building that long run into my marathon specific training. And the way that went, so I had instructions to take on 3 gels during the run, which again, I've never really done. Even when I was doing long runs a couple of months back, I was taking on kind of maximum 2, or at least one of the bigger 160, the Morton 160s. And so I did that run, no kind of target in terms of pace. I was just like, let's not have the watch off, but I just kind of wasn't looking at it. I was literally looking at distance ticking down as I went. And I had a gel basically like 5-10 minutes in. I had one at 55 minutes and one with about 20 minutes to go. And exactly the reason you said, I timed it like that because that's going to be pretty specific to what I do in the marathon. And again, because it's a training run, I know that if I'm having that last gel relatively close to the end, I'm not in a dire need to kind of fuel when I finish, because I'm not going to be completely like depleting that glycogen stores. But what I found happened is, because I am running quite early, I think I left the house at about 6:30, having woken up at 5. I went out pretty comfortably, and that was kind of 5 to 5:15. Okay. And then as I kind of warmed up, got into the run, half an hour in, I was like, yeah, I feel good. I'm just going to keep running at that easy, moderate pace. But as I'm getting more warmed up, the RPE is staying the same. So relative intensity was staying the same, but I was getting quicker. And it was only when I kind of stopped the watch at the end, I think it did kind of end up being a bit of a progressive run, because I looked at the pace, and it went, like I said, from being that 5:10, 5:15 down to the high 4s, 4:50, 4:55, and then by the end, I think there was a couple of the downhills I was running 4:20, if not kind of 4:30 on the flat, and that was like very comfortable. I'm pretty sure that if I'd have had kind of more fuel, I could have carried on. And like, again, I wasn't even in carbons, I was in the Super Blast 2, so that kind of built up a little bit of confidence in me, because
Good.
like my marathon goal pace, and I will be doing some work, I'm sure, at marathon goal pace, but that's probably going to be about 4:15. And like seeing how comfortable it was for me to get to like 4:25, 4:20, 4:30, around that space, and not being completely kind of tapered or in carbons, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty confident I could go out at 4:15 and sustain it for quite a while.
Yeah.
So actually, I
Good
really
signs.
enjoyed that.
Good signs.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some of those runs in carbons eventually as well.
Yeah. And those long runs, I mean, of course, there's the specific sort of stimulus for the marathon, but you get as much confidence off those as anything, especially when you're doing them at the end of maybe quite a big volume training week. That's what they do. They build that confidence that you can run 26.2 miles at the pace you want to run it.
Sure.
I don't think there's any training that builds the confidence to actually execute the marathon that you want to execute fully, in my own experience, unless you're running a marathon in training, which isn't advisable. But yeah, those long runs, they definitely help you feel that little bit more confident, I
can say you're talking about doing those marathons in training. Are you following Matt Fox at all in terms of his like doing a marathon a month, basically?
Yeah. Yep.
How fantastic is that? I'm like, again, I think there's a lot of stuff we're told like you can and can't do. And don't get me wrong, I definitely don't think that 99.9% of people should be running marathons that frequently. But yeah, the man's literally running marathons every month, and trying to like progressively PR as almost like a test to see what is possible. But yeah. That's inspiration right there.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. I think you're right. You mentioned about how we're told certain things, and we are all human beings, and human beings respond to things in a similar way, but we also have different experiences, and we all have had different levels of experience throughout our lives, and so the same rules cannot apply to everyone, So yeah, it is pretty cool what he's doing. I probably haven't looked into it enough. It's an interesting way to attempt to perform at your absolute peak, but I think he absolutely loves marathon running. Like, he's just in love with the idea of running marathons, which is really cool. And I think that for me, having that why and having that that buzz for it, that's one of the biggest things in terms of like just recovery and performance. And when you're in that place as a person, I mean, that's kind of the time to make hay. So yeah, good on him.
The only thing that I will say, and again, he'll never watch this, and I don't expect him to, but he talks about his kind of like recovery stack, his recovery process at the end of race, in terms of like ketones, creatine, and something else. And I think there's a lot of, I'm not going to talk about ketones because I haven't done enough research on it, and from what I've heard, it's very mixed. But coming from a personal training and resistance training background, something that definitely, and this is me going to be going on a little bit of a rant here, But something that needs to stop is people thinking that creatine is making them feel like they're recovering like almost immediately after a race, because that's not actually how creatine works. And again, for those that don't know, creatine is a very, it's found in food. It's like found in basically a lot of, or all meat products, especially red meats. And most of us don't eat anywhere near enough red meat to be able to get enough creatine, especially if you're kind of doing a lot of sprint-based work, especially because basically what creatine is doing is it's acting as a fuel source inside the muscle. So you eat creatine, it saturates in the muscle. Then when you do kind of short, very explosive bursts of energy, so think a 1 rep max on the deadlift or a very short sprint, the body, that's the first kind of source of energy before we can even start talking about kind of glucose or glycogen stores, like anaerobic metabolism. We're even before that.
Yeah, and so phosphocreatine, yeah.
It's phosphocreatine, yeah. So this is just kind of building up your stores of that. So the idea that having 5 grams of creatine, and again, creatine is something that you kind of, you don't need to load it. You literally just kind of have it consistently and it builds up your stores. And so all these people saying that, yeah, I feel like as soon as I started having creatine, I just felt fantastic. I felt like I was recovering. And I'm like, if you believe that and it's a strong enough placebo, then keep doing it, because placebos work. We know that. But physiologically, like creatine is not going to make you feel like you're recovering at the end of a marathon. It's probably just going to help get a little bit kind of more quality training in terms of that kind of, like we said, those short explosive sprints. And if that's helping you build up your fitness levels, then that's probably what's giving you the benefit in terms of marathon running. But I don't even think the research is conclusive of that at the minute, to be honest with you.
No, and also some people, I think, from creatine are possibly non-responders. Not everyone, but certain individuals. I know Matt, he takes like a bit of a concoction. I think it's protein, creatine, and ketones post-workout / post-race. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And I think realistically, of those things, the only thing that's like probably proven to improve recovery is going to be protein, for obvious reasons, because it's tissue breakdown and then hypertrophy as a result of kind of the anabolic signaling from taking protein. But that's not to say you shouldn't take creatine. Again, creatine's got so many benefits, even outside of training, and it's something that I recommend to my mum, to be honest, for just kind of preventing things like neural degeneration. It's a metabolic booster. So but
go on. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, just on the topic of supplements, actually, there's so again, me and Adam, like, we like to keep an eye on the news when it comes to things like professional running, and it's come to my attention. So this didn't even come to my mind when I first saw it, but obviously there was the half marathon record was broken in Barcelona. Was it last weekend? Yep. And to me, I was like, yeah, fantastic. Like 56 minutes, I think it was. That's awesome. But then I've listened to a few podcasts in the time between that half marathon record being broken. And I didn't realize, but the distance that he broke the previous half marathon record was by like 2 minutes, which
it was 44 seconds, I think.
Okay. My mistake. Yeah. But even still, that's quite a big increase.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden questions are being asked, because again, this is coming off the back. I think last year, the female marathon record was broken, and that was quite a significant break.
It wasn't just like smashed. No, it was smashed.
Yeah. And now we're talking a lot about like, okay. And again, last week, or 2 weeks ago now, from when we're recording this, Jakob Ingebrigtsen obviously broke the mile record, but it was by like such fine margins that you're like, okay, that's fine. It's so close that it's probably a result of training. But now there's a lot of we're going to use it. It's a very dirty word, people, but we're going to bring it up. We're talking about doping now. We're like, okay, is this kind of? I think it was, I was listening to Runners FM, and it was Mads was quoting someone, and they were like, look, this could be like the death of running, basically, because it's like, take from the quote what you will. And it wasn't Mad saying this, he was quoting someone else, but it was basically like, look, if you keep breaking these records by too much, you're, or the way it was interpreted was that you're basically admitting that you're juicing, you're taking gear, you're doping, however you want to call it. And it's almost too obvious. Basically. Thoughts, tell me.
Yeah, I put a little post up during the week. Just quite a few people have asked me about, do I think there is doping in sport, and do I think some of these records are dirty? Like, I mean, it's impossible for me to know as a layperson. I'm a massive fan of athletics and human performance and watching what the best in the world are doing. Don't get me wrong, like, that's what I love, and I think it's amazing what some of these people are doing. However, I think when you see these records being smashed by the margins that they're being smashed by, you mentioned that the women's marathon record was set by Ruth Chepngetich in Chicago last year. She ran 2 hours, 9 minutes, 56 seconds, which she completely obliterated the previous record. She was the first woman to ever run under 2 hours 10. That was a massive barrier. And then you have Jacob Kiplimo in Barcelona last week, who smashed the previous record, which was apparently on the edge of human performance already. I remember when that previous record was broken by, I think it was Kijelcha in Valencia last year. We talked about that as being, the frontier of, or the barrier of human performance. And so when you see these things these records that are being torn apart on a weekly basis, I think it would be silly not to raise, some sort of skepticism or, and to think about these things. I mean, for me, cheating and doping is in sport. That's just unfortunately the nature of human beings, is that there are some people that will do anything to, reach the top. And I think it's also important to note that there are many reasons why someone may do that. It's not just simply to be the best. It could be remuneration. It could be to change their livelihood forever. It could be to change the lives of people within their communities forever, particularly in some of the sort of the poorer countries out in Africa. And so, I think it's so important to kind of have that context on it all as well. Not that it makes it okay, but just to consider all of these kind of aspects and things that impact the decision making of individuals. And maybe the decision making is actually out of the individual's hands and actually more in the hands of the state in which they run for and represent, or maybe their agents. And listen, maybe at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual. I think, these are just points for discussion, really. But I've thought about it for a long time because I've loved sport for as long as I can remember. And I remember reading Lance Armstrong's books when I was very young, like I'm talking 13, 14, before he was popped for doping, or before he admitted his doping. And just thinking he was an absolute hero, overcoming all the adversity that he overcame and still going back and winning the Tour de France. But to come back to the point on doping and performance and what's been going on, records are being smashed left, right and centre. And when I say smashed, they're being completely torn apart. We're seeing a complete leap forward in human performance. And like I mentioned in the video that I put up on Instagram during the week, what I tend to see and what I've seen over the last, couple of years is lots of pro athletes, agents, coaches mentioning that nutrition has changed the game, particularly for long distance runners like half marathon and marathon runners. And like, as far as I can tell, nutrition there hasn't been much innovation within the world of nutrition. We've always known that, pretty much always known that we need carbs to fuel performance. We need lots of them. You find that the world of cycling tends to be significantly further forward than the world of athletics and running. Maybe not at the very top end. I would like to think athletics, is very much in tune with what's going on. But for me, there hasn't been. That was the point that I was trying to make. There hasn't been these leaps in innovation from a nutrition standpoint that I can see to warrant the leaps in performance that are actually that are happening. And that's kind of my thoughts on it. We unfortunately seem to be living in a world where clean sport is, I don't know, mate. It's
Look, I'll be completely honest with you, and this is, I'm just going to say this. We're on air. I really want to believe that there are I guess the people that are doping, because we all know it's happening. Like when people get to the very top of their game, and there is I guess what it is that mentality of professional athletes or any kind of competitive athletes is that when you're that high, most people will do absolutely anything to get to the top and be the best and get remembered, basically, because especially for runners or endurance athletes as a whole, it's not like you're kind of a professional football player and you're getting paid kind of £100,000 a week for Chelsea Football Club, and you're probably going to get remembered as being part of a world-renowned team, for instance. Like for runners, for cyclists, for any kind of athletes in that kind of category, let's call it even just the Olympic sports, right? The chances of you getting remembered forever are very, very low. So I think the pull of being able to look, this is what I need to do in order to be the best, because chances are, and I would love to say that I think that it's primarily a clean world out there when it comes to sports, but in my heart of hearts, I think if people started getting pop left, right, and center in terms of athletes, even football players and tennis players, would I be surprised? Not in the slightest. If they came out and told me that Cristiano Ronaldo, Usain Bolt, Rafael Nadal were taking something, because again, it's all on a spectrum. It's not like oh, this person has taken steroids. It's you've got different types, you've got different things, different chemicals, different hormones doing different things and whatnot. I wouldn't be surprised if they're all kind of taking something at some level. And I think ultimately that's because they all want to be the best. And like you said, I think when it's people that can make such a big impact in, because again, it's not even like a community thing. A lot of these guys are trying to, I'm sure they've got families, and if they win a race, that's their pay. They can give their families the best possible life. So I think that's just the nature of the beast. And do I think it's right to cheat? No, of course not. There's rules. I think you need to follow the rules. But at the end of the day, it's it's hard because everyone's doing it. It's the whole Lance Armstrong problem. And he came out and was like, yes, I did it, but everyone was doing it. My only chance at being the best, which again, I've got great admiration for Lance Armstrong. I really, really admire what he did. Not because he took steroids, but even without the steroids, or the fact that he was in a team or a time where cycling was just riddled with doping, that he was still the best. And he was not just the best, he was the best ever. And he probably will go down as now the most renowned, I guess, cyclist of all time.
I think that's a good point, mate. I think it's a good point to say that, the best, doped or not doped, will probably still be the best in a world of clean sport or dirty sport. Again, we're just talking around the points, but there is no question there are dirty athletes in the world, and there is no question that there are clean athletes in the world. And we use the expression that cream will always rise to the crop, and I'm sure there are athletes that are being, for example, when you see in hindsight, the thing about a lot of these drugs is they're metabolized by the body that fast. And so when the athlete becomes tested, that drug has gone. The half-life, the drug has been metabolized by the body, and there is no detection on a test. So you can talk about testing protocols all you like, but the testing protocols aren't fit for purpose. The thing about it as well is the people that are developing these chemicals and these drugs, they're light years ahead of the testing. And, they know exactly how the tests work. And, the people that are designing these drugs and administering these drugs are incredibly intelligent people. And they are well ahead of testing bodies and sporting authority in terms of their knowledge and their expertise and everything else. But yeah, it's just one of those things, you know. It's always going to be a talking sport. It's always going to be a talking point in sport, and there have been athletes now that have been popped. You know, we're seeing a lot of athletes being popped in the sport of distance running after maybe a year or 2 years. We've seen a lot of Kenyan athletes recently being popped. We all know what happened with Russia and you know, the state-sponsored doping that happened there, and how they couldn't compete in the last Olympics because, you know, the doping was actually funded by the state. And so have to be careful what I say now. We'll have no podcast in a week's time if I keep talking about Russia and state-sponsored doping. But
there'll be no us next week.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, but you know, and that's the thing. There are athletes that are being done out of medals, done out of prize money, done out of XYZ, because of dopers. And then we talk about like the local level and the local scene. And I think, you know, yes, there's a part of me that I don't even want to use the word understands, but can empathize with some of the athletes that have doped in the past, for example, you know, at elite level, because of, you know, things like poverty and, you know, the pressure that is being put on those athletes, maybe by their state or by their country and by the federation. Because if it's not them, you know, I always think about this. I also read Tyler, I think it's Tyler Andrews' book. He was a teammate of Lance back at US Postal during the days when Lance was at his pump. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he said in his book, like, if he wasn't doping and he wasn't doing what his team told him, then it was just going to be someone else. He just wouldn't have a job, you know. And so there is part of me that empathizes with those athletes, because you really have no choice, you know. And then I think about it on a local level, like, who knows if it's going on at a local level? I don't know. But for those individuals, I have no empathy because, I mean, you're just doing it for your own personal gain.
Yeah.
You know, there's no kind of like,
there's no payout. There's no like looking after your family. You just, I mean, you're just getting local first place.
The payout is the time on the clock, and like, what does that mean if it's been done with the aid of something that is illegal? So yeah, we're not even, I don't think we even need to go down that rabbit hole, but I kind of just wanted to touch on that. I suppose I don't want to call it a level of understanding, but there's a level of empathy with certain athletes throughout sort of history at the elite level, and the reason for it is kind of those points that I just covered. It's the pressures, it's kind of the forcing of it, you know, all of those things. It doesn't excuse it, but there is a certain level of empathy, you know.
Hey, look, I'll give you the hottest take of the day today, and this is something that I'm pretty, I don't want to believe it, but the chances are it's true that at the end of the day, if we were talking about testing earlier and then just how far ahead the kind of pharmaceuticals companies are, and that's exactly right. But at the end of the day, let's say you've got I don't even know how the governing body of the Olympics works for whatever, but again, I think with what might be happening is it could be that people like that oversee the Olympics, the athletics, let's say that people all of a sudden, like, let's say we get rid of doping and they just stamp it out. They do whatever they can. All of a sudden there are no world records being broken. There's no more kind of, there's none of that. There's no, I guess build up around races. You don't have people going for this because that it's just what's going to happen. So part of me is thinking like, well, if it did exist, I think the chances are a lot of these governing bodies are well aware of it and they probably turn a blind eye to it. It's same as like, it's about CrossFit, right? Like, let's not kind of beat around the bush here. A lot of these professional CrossFit athletes who are competing in the games, like CrossFit, they claim that they're a completely clean sport. You look at these guys, there's no way on heaven or earth that they're clean. And part of me just thinks that CrossFit, they're turning a blind eye, or they're being very selective with how they test. And the chances are, I think that's probably the case for a lot of very, very high level sports as well, because people start getting pops that no one's going to watch it because no one wants to see like times get slower or stay the same.
Yeah, there's a part of me that can kind of see your point of view, but you know what I was thinking, mate, when you were just saying that? It's like, well, what is athletics truly all about, you know? And, you know, for me, when I watch any athletics meeting, I'm not really excited to see a world record anymore. Like, world records, like, they're happening every week. I mean, they don't excite me. That's not what racing is actually about. Racing is about the individuals within that race going toe to toe, and seeing who is the most, like, the fittest and the most tactically able to win that race on any given day. And for me, it's like when someone just runs away from the field and runs a world record, mate, it's the most boring race to watch. Do you know, that's not racing, that's not athletics. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people will come back to me and say, like, surely watching world records is exciting. But for me, I'd rather see, like, you know, a 1500 meter race that's hotly contested. Like, for example, the Olympic final this year was an unbelievable race to watch from a tactical point of view. You know, Jakob Ingebrigtsen took it on from the front, and arguably, well, not arguably, he clearly did just go a little bit too early in terms of he burnt those matches a little bit too early, and Cole Hawker kind of came from nowhere with his amazing kick and won the race, and that was a proper race. You know, we didn't see a world record. That was championship racing, and for me, that's what athletics is truly all about. Granted, there may have been athletes in that race that are doped to the eyeballs, but what I'm saying is like, when I watch athletics, I want to watch athletics for proper races, and I think it comes down to probably the marketing of the sport, you know, and how we actually view the sport, and not viewing it from the standpoint that world records need to be broken and there's an expectation that world records are broken, but rather we see really good races, and maybe that comes from like educating people and showing people what good racing looks like and how exciting it can actually be. Because, mate, when you see a good race, there's like a proper good race, there's nothing quite like it. The Armagh 5K last Thursday evening, I watched the live stream on TV at home, and that was a proper race. Do you know, it was toe to toe racing. The young fella from Sweden, Seb Larstad, he went out on the front and took it on, and like it was neck and neck for the last sort of 700-800 meters, and just watching it unfold as a race was really cool to watch, and for me, so much more entertaining and so much more enjoyable than watching someone run against the clock to a world record. That's my I suppose thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, look, honestly, I couldn't agree more. I think definitely coming from a place of it's not how it should be, but as someone who's only got into kind of watching as a spectator things like running relatively recently, I think it's when we talk about like the masses, what do most people think of when they think about the Olympics? Or it's people like Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps, who were just their record breakers. Paula Radcliffe, as a Brit, like they're record breakers. That's what they did, and that's why they're remembered. And like, unfortunately, it loses that gravitas. Like, people aren't going to be talking about these things, even though these are like spectacular races, the ones that aren't necessarily record breaking, but people don't talk about the other ones. And from a standpoint of the Olympics want people to watch. They want spectators. They don't want to lose traction. So I think that's why they will always need those world records being broken, and why I think they probably would turn a blind eye to doping if it means that these people are kind of giving people a reason to watch, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but I'm completely with you, man. I think once you've got a good contest and you understand the sport or have a vested interest, it's like watching, like, I don't watch football every week because I want to see like Cristiano Ronaldo kind of be the fittest person and break records. Like, I'll happy watch like a tactical 1-0 because I want to see like I want to see art and I want to see tactics in the game because I understand the game and that's why I watch it. But unfortunately, like, majority of people don't think like that. Most people would think, oh, it's a 0-0 or it's a 1-0, therefore it must be a bad game. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like, if you understand
or
it.
It's like watching the game live at 3:00 on a Saturday and then watching Match of the Day that night, and my wife, she'll be like, did you not watch that game today? Like, yeah, I did, but like,
it's not the
I'm
point.
watching the game. I want to see the highlights.
Yeah.
But no, go on ahead.
The best thing for me is I'll watch a game. I'll probably watch the highlights maybe afterwards, and then I'll go watch a YouTube video breaking down the game so I can like fully understand it. It's like
Yeah,
you
we're
just
proper fan.
don't worry. Yeah, you wouldn't get it.
No,
But no,
but
I completely agree.
I don't know if you listen to Coffee Club podcast. It's a few of the guys from On Track Club in the States. Morgan McDonald, who's an Aussie runner. Ollie Hoare, he's another Aussie guy. And they have a few kind of regular guests on that show. It's they're pro athletes, as I say, running with On. They host a podcast called Coffee Club, and I did just check my phone this morning before we started recording, and they've released just a podcast, I think, over the last 24 hours, basically talking about why so many records are broken. So I'm going to go listen to that this morning on my run, and it'll be really interesting to hear their thoughts on it. They also are teammates with Jared Nagus, who broke the 1 mile indoor record the week before Jakob, and they had Jared on, who is just like one of the nicest guys in athletics. When you hear him speak, you just couldn't dislike him. He is a really nice bloke. So it'll be interesting to hear what their thoughts are. Like, again, we talk about innovation in nutrition. I kind of going to say that those guys may touch on innovation within training. Do you know, because I'm hearing a lot of people saying like, oh, there's smarter training. And we hear so much about double threshold and how threshold seems to be this magic sauce that is changing the game. Again, I just don't believe it. You know, it's as simple as that. I don't believe it. You know, being kind of a man of science, I guess, and, you know, I just don't think the human body we can't accelerate development without, you know, putting something else into the system that is going to assist with that accelerated development. And like, for me, double threshold training isn't that key that's going to just open that lock to accelerate the you know, I think from a natural perspective, there's nothing that we can do as human beings. I mean, look how long we've existed. There's nothing that we can do to accelerate that natural progression. I guess that's the kind of way I'd like to phrase that. So I'll be really interested to hear their take on it. Personally, I don't believe that there has been the innovation in training or nutrition to warrant the jumps in performance that we're seeing.
Yeah, look, I 100% agree in terms of training, because I think realistically things like the double threshold, the Norwegian method, it's been around for quite a while now, and I think everyone would be doing the same thing if it was like the way to progress, because every elite athlete has a team of exercise physiologists on their side. It's just the way it is. And like, if it was the way, you'd have people like Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Eden, who obviously, like, they're the big names, the triathletes that follow kind of the Norwegian method. They'd be winning absolutely everything, and it's just not what pans out, because even people with other methods or different approaches to training are still winning. So at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual, and so many like other factors. But I would say that there's probably more coming down to nutrition than there is training. Just in this, I know you said there's been no innovations, and I think what you were saying is that it is correct in that we know that we need carbohydrates to fuel, and we need to get as many of them in as possible. But I think, and like you were saying, the cyclists definitely seem to be the pioneers of getting nutrition in, because obviously those are the guys that are not just performing like longer races, but they're on the bike for 5-6 hours, and then at the end of a 5-6 hour kind of race, they need to actually do the race, whether it's the last climb or the sprint to the end. So they're obviously looking at ways to kind of go forward with that. And I've forgotten the name, but there's the ultra.
We have a habit of doing that.
We really do, Adam. We need to do better with this. We need to actually get some notes to the side. Whoops.
Yeah.
But you might have seen it, the ultra marathoner who beat the record last year. So this guy went out and did the God, I think you know it.
I think it's David Roche.
100. David Roche. That's it. And again, this is a guy that basically came from a background of doing like 150 miler, and he went out and did the Leadville 100, which is a very, very unforgiving ultramarathon course. And he broke the record of a guy who had like a VO2 max of something like 90, like in the high 90s. The guy that had it before David, which is phenomenal. And I know VO2 max isn't necessarily an indicator of endurance, but story for another day.
But it's a good indicator for like potential, I think.
Potential, yeah, for sure. And I think what David was saying, the reason why he won it is because nutrition. Like, not only was he someone who was able to kind of stomach the amount of carbs, he did a lot of training around like his gut training, but it was also about kind of the timing and the types of carbs. And I mean, we know we've got Morton now, which are the gels I take. They're coming in the form of a hydrogel. So instead of like, again, as soon as you put something into your mouth that's food, you've started the digestive process because it's being broken down by your saliva. With these hydrogels, and they have the same thing for their bicarb, is it's in basically a casing. So it kind of skips the digestive tract, and as soon as it gets into the intestine, I want to say, it just goes straight into the blood. And that is like, that I suppose that's innovation. And again, it might not work the same for everyone, but for someone like me who maybe doesn't have the best kind of digestive ability, or kind of food when running doesn't sit too well, if I'm able to get that carb directly into my bloodstream without having the digestive issues or it passing straight through me, all of a sudden I've got a bit of a performance booster. So I definitely think there's something to be said for maybe being able to get those carbs in more efficiently, or even like the type of carb. Like, it's not just like we're having table sugar here, we're having like very specific ratios of like glucose to fructose in a gel. We know that it's a 0.8 to 1 kind of ratio.
And that's a really good point. You know, there has been innovation within nutrition, there is no question, and there has been massive sort of leaps in terms of our knowledge. But I guess just to sort of clarify the point, like the leaps in nutrition have been well known within the world of elite sport for a very long time now at this stage, and those leaps don't warrant the jumps in performance. Does that make sense?
For sure.
The athletes that I coach, you know, for example, the athletes that I coach, when we discuss their racing nutrition and their pre-run nutrition and so on and so forth, I almost kind of phrase carbohydrate periodization as like, this is our doping. You know, if you can get your carb intake correct and sort of use
100%.
carbohydrates in the right way, this is a massive performance enhancer. Just like caffeine can help to enhance performance, and just like having really good sleep can help to enhance performance, and just like having the right training stimulus each week and in your block of training, those things are all going to enhance your performance massively. But yeah, at the elite level, you know, those leaps in carbohydrate periodization and even the types of carbohydrates, they don't warrant the leaps in performance. But you're right. There has been big innovation within, you know, things like the hydrogel and so on that can definitely help get that fuel on board and get it to the working muscles quicker.
Yeah, and again, I couldn't agree more. I definitely don't. I'm not saying that carbohydrate innovation in the last kind of couple of years has warranted a record like that. Kiplimo, that's something else.
It's the Morton. Yeah,
it's got to be the
56-minute half marathon. It's the bicarb. It's the ketones. It's the Morton. You know, 4 years ago it was the shoes, which like I could kind of accept that shoes were definitely giving us a good boost on performance. But yeah, nutrition is not one of those things.
Even then, like carbon plated shoes now, let's be honest, they're all the same. I know we all have our favorites, but you're probably getting the same benefit as someone in a complete different brand. But something that I actually, just a funny kind of anecdote that, again, I think this was it was someone's podcast, that's for sure. It was definitely someone's. Bro, I've forgotten. We've got a brain like a sieve. No, in my defense, this is right before my bedtime, so I'm quite tired. That's why I keep forgetting things. But I'm sure it'll come to me. But in this podcast,
you need to make sure you're getting your creatine in, mate.
Mate, I think that's it. I might have missed it today. I can't even remember. No, but look, they were talking about it was the guy that trains Christian and Gustav, the triathletes. Olav Blue, that's the one. It was a podcast with him, and they were talking about Lance Armstrong, actually, and obviously kind of doping. So he was talking about how to build endurance. And someone interviewed Lance to be like, because obviously he gets asked a lot about the doping and how that worked. But someone was like, oh, so how did you actually like fuel on the bike in the late 90s, early thousands? And he was like, dude, we just kind of ate when we were hungry and you ate whatever. So that kind of shows just how, imagine people like Lance and the US Postal Team, if they were today with what we knew and weren't just kind of smashing down whatever, I'm like, man, you'd have some crazy, phenomenal athletes.
Yeah, I think Lance sometimes is quite blasé though when he's asked some questions. He's
Very true.
He's got that kind of attitude, hasn't he? Where he's just like, yeah, man, we were just doing this, and this, and it's like,
yeah,
surely it was a bit more. There was a bit more of a dialed in approach than that.
Yeah,
cycling innovation has always been years ahead of kind of, we sort of learn about nutrition through the world of, day-to-day nutrition. We have learned a lot through the world of elite sport, because that's where kind of the innovation is happening. It's almost like, the cars that are being built now, the innovation that's going into those cars is kind of coming and feeding down from like Formula One, for example, because that's the cutting edge of the technology, and that's where the kind of the smartest minds are working. But yeah, I always laugh when I hear Lance speaking, because he's blasé.
I've listened to a few podcasts with, I listen to a lot of podcasts, funnily enough. I listen to a lot of podcasts with Lance for the same reason. I just find him really interesting to listen to because he's such a character. But he's definitely got this way about him where he's like, yeah, it was kind of nothing. We were just kind of in the back of a shed or a caravan with like doped up and doing our blood doping, sitting there getting extracted. But
such a rock star, Lance.
Mate, such a rock star. And I guess he could afford to be, because he is kind of like one of the most well-known athletes of all time. But yeah, look, I think we've probably chatted on about doping enough. And Adam, to be honest, before we actually wrap up this podcast, I wanted to put you on the spot a little bit, mate. Now, genuinely, we haven't spoke about this, but yesterday evening, I actually saw, and again, for those that don't know, Adam, you're from Northern Ireland, and you've definitely got a culture around kind of Irish. Is it called trad tunes or trad music?
Yeah. Traditional Irish music. Yep, that's right.
Traditional Irish music, right? And a little video came up on my feed, and it was you doing some really interesting dancing. And initially, I didn't actually believe it was you, because I was like, man, that's got to be like a professional Irish dancer or something. And might I say, as someone that I wouldn't even try and dance, I couldn't dance if I wanted to. Adam, I think you were fantastic, my friend. And
well, I really appreciate that.
Can you talk us through what happened?
Well, it was my wedding day, to kick things off. So that's just the thing that I'm going to say first off. I had a few Guinness in me at the time.
Couple of beverages. What was that?
I had a few Guinness in me at the time, and obviously the form was pretty good. And the music came on, mate, and something came over me, and I just thought I would take to the floor and try to bust out a bit of a jig. So yeah, that video made its way to Instagram by the band that played at our wedding. That video made its way to Instagram yesterday. I had seen the video before.
Okay, good.
Obviously hadn't shared the video. But yeah, how did you say that, mate?
I have no idea. It must have come up on my suggested or something.
Oh man, I think Kira might have shared it. Yeah, so Kira shared the video.
Maybe.
So maybe you've seen it there. And maybe my sister shared it as well, and they all tagged me in it, but I wasn't for sharing that.
Dude, yeah, it was fantastic. Like, and again, I wouldn't say it's my forte, like traditional Irish music, but I've enjoyed everything that I've heard. And watching you do that, I was like, man, I wish I could move like that.
Yeah, it was a bit of fun. So that was my wedding day. Yeah, that's the excuse for that one. That was my wedding day. You've made me going a bit red, mate. I felt the blood pressure rise there over the last couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, listen, that was good crack. Yeah.
No, that was awesome, man. I just wanted to give you kudos for that, because brilliant. Even
we also
and everything.
Yeah. We'll go no further.
Yep.
So so we also mentioned last week about do you remember last week we were talking about Matt Fox's podcast and the marathoner who was using it. It was one of those moments where we were talking about something that we couldn't remember like any of the details.
The name,
I went and dug back a little bit. It was Adam Lipschitz.
Lipschitz, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So he's a 2:08:54 marathoner. He ran that in Valencia last year. I think it may have been his first marathon, but
Yes.
he was using something called the ARC trainer. That's the name of the trainer.
We've got it.
Yeah, that's the one.
Fantastic.
So,
there you go.
but believe it or not, mate, there is actually one in my local gym here. So
there you go.
I dropped in to do my treadmill session on the weekend, and I've got an athlete that I'm working with at the minute who is suffering with a bit of a niggle, and we're talking about cross training and getting him on a cross training sort of protocol to help to continue to build fitness and maintain some fitness while he's going through this sort of injury. And I couldn't believe it. We were talking about an ARC trainer in our messages, and I couldn't believe when I walked into the leisure centre that there was actually an ARC trainer there. I thought these things were like unicorns, and we might have only seen them in somewhere like the States, but yep, there's one ARC trainer in the local leisure centre. I hope it never gets moved because if I pick up a niggle, it's definitely something I'll be looking to experiment with. And even post-marathon, I might look to maybe get on there and have a bit of a play around. But just for the listener as well, like to show you that there is more than one way to skin a cat, pardon the kind of the explicit terminology, but what I mean is, people think about marathon running, they always think it's all about high volume and running a lot of mileage. And, Adam, as I say, is a 2:08 marathon runner. He averaged 85 kilometers per week for the 12 weeks leading into his marathon. He cross-trained twice per week. And in his build-up, he done 4 long runs over 40 kilometers, which 2 of those were what he deems as hard and 2 of them are what he deems as slow. And his biggest week was 126 kilometers, and that included 2 days of not running. So I think, that just feeds into the point that there are many ways to do this, and he's living proof of that. The caveat to that is, the guy is clearly talented beyond belief. He has so much probably speed to burn, and so when he kind of adds the endurance piece to that, he runs a fast marathon, and everything's clicked on the day for him, of course. But yeah, there aren't many elite marathon runners that are running under 2 hours 10 minutes that are running 85.5 kilometers or 50 miles, 53 miles per week during their kind of marathon build. That's phenomenal. So he used the ARC trainer a lot, and he mentioned that it really helped with his cadence and also building that kind of continuing to build his aerobic fitness without the load on the lower body.
Yeah, and that's definitely a plug to go listen to that, because I did listen to the whole podcast as well. Really, really like insightful as well because I think Adam was quite just honest and open about what he went through and even some of his tactics for the marathon itself and how it ended up going so well. So a really good listen there on the podcast with Matt and Adam. So definitely go listen to that. Sweat Elite for those, just because we didn't name drop it. But yeah, Adam, we've been recording for a little while now. Did you want to leave the people with a bit of a jig before we go, or?
Yeah, I'll just get up there and bust one out.
Yep.
No, mate, we'll leave that for a Saturday night maybe.
Done.
Thanks for bringing that up, mate. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. No, but what I want to do is you can actually send me. I want to see you on the ARC trainer next week, and I want to see it. I want to see some videos, because again, off the top of my head, I couldn't even tell you what one looks like, and I'd rather see you kind of give it a go than have to go and YouTube it. So yeah, I want to see you jumping on.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Any plans for the weekend?
Say that again, sorry?
Any plans? Sorry, mate, I'm talking too quick now.
That's
Any
okay.
plans for the weekend?
Me? No. Back to a pretty standard weekend for me. I've still got my mum and her partner down from the UK, so tomorrow we're going to go up to see the missus's family, so it'll be a nice kind of big family get together. I'll just do some upper body training in the morning. It's my recovery day, so recovery. There's not much upper body muscles for me to train, so it's quite easy. But then, yeah, Sunday, got a nice 5x2K, I think. Probably my favourite distance to cover. So, and then we'll see where the afternoon takes us. But what about you?
Lovely. No, mate, quiet weekend. Probably go out for some food on Sunday and after the long run. But no, apart from that, just nice and quiet, which during marathon training is just perfect. So
it's needed.
Yeah. Lots of recovery, lots of running, and lots of laundry and food.
There you go. That's mine and Adam's life. It's running, it's laundry, it's food. In varying orders. For me, food's first and running's in the middle, but I know it probably changes for Adam. But
Yeah, it's
guys,
not a
I
bad
think
life, mate.
it's really not that bad at all. Nothing to complain about from us. But yeah, guys, look, thank you so much for putting up with us for a fourth time. This is, I know it's our episode 3, but again, it's our fourth recording. It's been great having you along the way. Again, just a reminder, please, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free to share it, to download it, to follow us on Spotify, all the socials, YouTube, Instagram, Strava. We have them all. Every kind of listen, download, follow really goes a long way in helping us kind of share the podcast and get as much recognition as we can. So that would mean the world to us. But otherwise, we will see you back here next Wednesday for the next episode. And again, if you've ever got anything that you are wanting us to cover, feel free to drop your suggestions in the comments, or even you can message us on Instagram as well. But guys, thank you so much again, and we will chat soon.